Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Winnetka Village Council regular meeting of February 7th, 2023. I'd like to call the meeting to order and ask everybody in the room to please mute your cell phones or other electronic devices. And I'll ask the village clerk to do a roll call for attendance.
Thank you. Trustee Apatow?
Here.
Trustee Kreip? Here. Trustee Handler?
Here.
Trustee Dearborn? Here. Trustee Swerk?
Here.
Trustee Dahlman?
Here.
President Rentz?
Here. Number 2 is the Pledge of Allegiance, and I'll lead us this evening.
Lights on, you're off.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. All right, item 3 is quorum check. Rob, you want to go ahead and...
Sir, the study session for next week is canceled. February 21st. Meeting look okay for everybody? And then the first meeting in March is the 7th. And Bob, you said
I will not be there.
okay. Anybody else conflict on
I
the 7th?
may not be here.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Okay, item number 4 is public comment. This is the time of the evening where anybody in the room is welcome to come on up to the podium and address Village Council on any item that is not on this evening's agenda. So if you're here to speak on any of the items that are on the agenda, regretfully you're going to have to wait, but if you want to just talk to us about other stuff, you're welcome to come on up to the podium and share your thoughts. Come on up, Irene.
Is that okay?
Nope.
Can you hear me?
Please.
I don't think it's on.
Somebody's got to turn you on.
Can you hear me okay? Thank you. So I'm Irene Smith, 1087 Elm Street. First, I'd like to commend the trustees and all the staff for presenting 2 study sessions about lakefront regulation. I'm very grateful for all the information that was presented both nights. Tonight, I'd like to talk about Centennial Park and the proposed swap of the southern 71 feet of Centennial for 261 Sheridan Road. Even if you've lived here quite a while, you may not know the history of this beautiful park. Winnetka was incorporated in 1869. In 1900, a private healthcare facility called North Shore Health Resort was built and opened on the 5-acre tract we now know as Centennial Park. In the 1950s, the sanitarium, then known as North Shore Hospital, treated psychiatric disorders exclusively. Nelson Algren was a resident there for not quite 2 weeks in 1956. He escaped through a window and down a fire escape. The hospital closed in 1968 because the value of the real estate far exceeded the profitability of the hospital. C.A. Hemphill and Associates, a name you may know for building homes and condos in Winnetka, bought the property, which they planned to divide into 10 half-acre home sites to build custom homes. The Winnetka Plan Commission first reviewed the proposed development in late 1968. At the same time, a group of 40 Winnetka residents collected 1,300 signatures in support of a park on the hospital parcel. The Park District filed a condemnation suit to stop Hemphill and allow time to organize a referendum to fund the purchase of the land from Hemphill. The referendum passed by 119 votes on December 7, 1968, a day that will live in infamy. The new park was dedicated in 1969, the 100-year anniversary of Winnetka's incorporation as a village, hence the name Centennial Park. History often repeats itself. As I understand it, Centennial Park is zoned residential. However, in order for the park to become private land or for any use other than parkland, you, the village trustees, must issue a special use permit. In other words, the onus is on the village to protect or swap away the southern part of Centennial. We have a rather large group of Winnetka residents who are opposed to trading away any of this valuable piece of property. Just like the 40 residents in 1968, we would like you all to know that we love Centennial Park just as it is. The house and land at 261 Sheridan can be dealt with in other ways. Perhaps a local resident might offer to buy it from Orchard 2020. Perhaps Orchard 2020 might donate it to the Park District or the village. Perhaps we'll continue to have 2 individual parks at Elder and Centennial, just as we've had for more than 50 years. Our goal is to keep Centennial Park whole. Thank you to the Winnetka Historical Society for the background, and thanks to you for listening.
Thanks, Irene.
Thanks, Irene.
Ted, did you have your hand up? Oh, I'm sorry. First.
Hi, Ted Winchester. So I'm sorry I couldn't stay last week. I'm very tired. So I wanted to touch on some of the things. I did watch the tape though, very exciting. I wanted to touch on some of the things that I heard, which, frankly, kind of I find troubling. Oh, sorry. Which I sort of, find a little troubling. And in no particular order. I appreciate that we're concerned about property values, but it's not just property value, right? We can make the lakeshore a lot more valuable. We could abandon the street ends. We could put up walls at every public access point and let the homeowners that have homes along the lake, do whatever they want. That would make those properties even more valuable. Of course, it might make other properties in Winnetka less valuable. So when we talk about value, I think we need to talk about value for everyone in the village, not just for particular people. And I was a little concerned by this idea that we're going to talk more about value, because it seemed to me like we were talking about value for a subset of the population, not for all the residents. And I'm also concerned by what I feel to be continued misunderstandings of what Illinois law says. And I'm sure the village attorney could comment on this. The idea that we have to keep our feet wet to be on public land along the lakeshore is false. There is some truth to it. If we go back to the Northwest Ordinance of 1878 and we look at what the shoreline was like there, and we make sure that the owners of that land didn't do things to cause accretions and blah, 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 then yes, then that might be the case. But the fact is that there was a lot of work done, and a lot of those owners have permits which have filled in the lake. And those permits explicitly state that that filled land is public. It doesn't have to be wet. It's hard to know in any particular situation. But when the council perpetuates these one-sided ideas of what's private and public, I'm concerned that we miss the bigger picture, that we really don't know. And so the public has the right not only to walk where it's wet, but in a lot of places where it's dry, and not just walk, but do whatever they want. And the last thing that kind of annoyed me was that the council talked about how we were going to be doing things that were reasonable and basing that on what was done before, when the village essentially abdicated any responsibility to manage these projects. How are projects that were built 20 years ago without village input or village oversight reasonable, and why should they be used as a standard for what we should consider reasonable now? Perhaps if the village had been administering this, those projects wouldn't have been built. Maybe they're all unreasonable, and using that as a standard for what we do today isn't necessarily correct. So finally, I wanted to touch on the discussion that I heard about the current property owner. You know what? I think we're all losing sight of the fact that while it's hard for me to really believe that the plan now is so much more reasonable, so much more in line. If we look back at when this all started, the Park District actually had a purchase agreement for 261 Sheridan for $5 million. They were going to buy it and combine the two parks, until the current owner stepped in, offered $6.2 million for that same parcel, and took it out from under them. It is clear that the current owner was going to leverage that to get more private benefit out of the lakeshore. And so to talk about how the plan now is much more reasonable, same person was quoted multiple times as saying how he required privacy along the lakeshore, that the
beach was his and he needed to have privacy for his family. It's hard for me to believe that there's been a 180-degree shift with that property owner. And so I just think that we need to keep these things in line. So I know I went over 3 minutes, I'm sorry. I would point out that I had some free time this weekend. I was reading the Institutes of Justin Tin, book 2, title 1 of things, from like 500 AD. And it's funny because back then, the following things are by natural law common to all: the air, running water, and the sea, and consequently the seashore. No one, therefore, is forbidden access to the seashore, provided he abstains from injury to houses, monuments, and buildings generally.
Okay, Ted.
I know. And I think it's interesting that we've come from that to a situation where we're arguing whether or not we can have our feet dry on the beach.
Anyone else like to speak?
Yeah, good evening. I'm Jim King, live at 235 Linden, and want to compliment the trustees and everyone on the village staff and what have you for the great work on the streetscape and getting the storm water project going. And it looks like we're making a lot of great progress. I've been here a couple of times on the subject I'm going to talk on, but watching the news over the last 4 or 5 weeks made me think that maybe I should come up for a third strike here and talk about the undergrounding overhead utilities. And as a little background, and if you were here before when I talked, I'll try to go through this fairly quickly so I don't bore you. But anyway, in 2017, Bill Forsythe and I and some other neighbors got together with 31 homes from Hill Road to Willow and worked through trying to do the discretionary undergrounding of the utilities along there. And we went through the whole enchilada, all the engineering, talked with, got actual costs, construction costs, got Comcast, AT&T, legal, what have you, for the 31 homes, and went through and did tried to work through the village code. Everyone always asks, what does it cost? At that time, it was about $12,000 per house that was already undergrounded, and about $21,000 for someone that had overhead lines to their homes. So we went and you're probably I think it's still the village code 1308-230. It may have changed because I know there's some rewriting of the code. But on that discretionary undergrounding, it's really based upon getting 90% of the residents, not the voting residents, to vote positive for it before you get it approved. Our experience was that it's impossible. 20% don't respond, 10% are sellers, and 15% don't do anything. And that's again, we're talking about people that live there, not people that vote. So right now, the village is never going to have a group of citizens put together a project and underground utilities on their own because it's impossible. So, the benefits of it, it would help the aesthetics. We got reliability. We've seen all the lines that have been down these ice storms, and it reduces annual maintenance for the city. And I understand that the village is looking into long-term projects, probably similar to the storm sewer, to try to do this over a long-term, and that's great. But I don't see there's any reason not to have discretionary neighborhood undergrounding taking place at the same time that this planning is going on, and there's some benefits on it. I've lived here for 40 years, and quite frankly, I'm running out of patience and runway on this, so I'd like to get something going on it. And it also encourages homeowners to take initiative on their own and not the village cost to do it, or not complete village costs. And so I've got a lot of information. I'm happy to share it with the village. Going forward, if we're going to do anything, we've got to revise that ordinance. And then I could see a partnership here where the residents pay all the direct costs of doing a discretionary undergrounding, and the village takes the position of being the general contractor, getting the bids, overseeing the work. So there'd be some cost to the village. I don't know if that's 90-10, 80-20, but it's not 50-50. And I think there'd be some great experience learned from doing 2 or 3 of these projects for doing the comprehensive undergrounding, as far as getting the experience, the actual construction costs, what it costs the village to oversee these things, AT&T, legal, frame, you know, you'd learn a lot of things having smaller projects before you take on 300 or 400 homes at a time. And so specifically, you've got to change the code. I think it's got to get to something where you got 50%, maybe go 55%, pick a number you want, but it's somewhere around 50, 60% of the people that vote approve it. There'd be no school bond, anything else we do in the village if you had to get 90% of the residents to approve before you move forward. Then I think you'd take a look at the areas that are going to be done and how large they are. I've got documents from, I grew up in Southern California and spent time out there, but there's been 2 big projects on Balboa Island, Laguna Beach, and a couple others where they've successfully done these at the, you know, set up a huge district. And it's basically what I was talking about, but instead of 30 homes, you do it for 300 homes.
Jim, we gotta wrap it up.
Pardon?
We gotta wrap it up pretty quick.
Okay, I'll wrap it
Thanks.
up. So anyway, specifically, what we got to do, we got to change the ordinance, got to provide, you know, some financing for it, and we pursue that special service area financing, which doesn't work because you got to have 100% of the people in all getting financed. Some people want to pay up front, some want to pay in the back. I'm happy to split the legal fees of changing that ordinance with you up to a max of $20,000. My share being 10, not 40. So anyway, I've got a lot of information, happy to share it with you. I realize you may not want to do it, and that's fine, but just let me know, because I don't want to just be left in limbo on this. So I don't know if it's the village staff, the trustees, whatever. I'm happy to sit down with you off, so I'm not taking anyone's time up. But I don't think just silence is a good way to react. So I've got copies of this up for the trustees and 2 other people, so thank you for your time.
Sure, and just, Jim, there's a lot going on behind the scenes on this issue, and we're hoping to have a study session probably later in the year once some of these things have clarified, and we'll certainly be sure to invite you to the table and share your thoughts. But we have a lot of work tonight, though.
No, I know, but there's a lot of work to do on this, but I don't see any reason why you can't have some of these projects of 30 homes, 50 homes go forward while this comprehensive plan's being sorted out, and I'm happy to help on the comprehensive.
Nothing to do with the comp plan. It's just there's a lot of other stuff going on that directly related to this issue. So
Okay.
And we'll keep you in the
And, you know,
loop.
and I always hear AT&T is the problem, but we got AT&T to give us a cost. So anyway, there's hurdles, but I'd like to get over them and not study it.
I hear you. Thank you. Katie?
Well, I have a comment on that, but I don't want it to be part of my 3 minutes. I shared with my neighbor
Go ahead.
the bearing of the cables, and it was a lot less. So just something to consider. Not my 3 minutes. So we have had generations of thoughtful leadership in our village. And thank you from the bottom of my heart. There's no one more passionate about this lakefront than me. No one. As you know, I'm passionate about preserving green space, and I'm obviously, I mentioned last time, we worked on trying to buy 261 Sheridan, Dwyer Park not becoming a Trader Joe's or condominiums, the village yards not being in the middle of the park, and stormwater, and now we're working on the lakefront. So I care. I have no financial gain of any time. Residents have been told that there's a proposal in the village's comprehensive plan, 2040 plan, to change the zoning of parks like Elder, Centennial, Spruce, Cherry, Willow, etc. I'm curious that this proposal is intended to remove the village's oversight, which allows its review. What happens to our valuable and irreplaceable, priceless lakefront? The village is the only person that has jurisdiction over the lakefront. You have a half a mile into the lake, you have the opportunity to go 3 miles into the lake. I believe it is your responsibility to keep this oversight on what happens in its entirety on the lakefront. Why would the comprehensive plan want to take away the important rights of the village to be a check and balance against the park and school districts as to what is done with our public land? Who will protect the residents from the abuse of public lands? We all pay for these properties and should have a say in what happens. In 2006, I worked with a group of fellow members of our garden club to buy 261 Sheridan. We weren't as bright back then as how to understand what works in the village. And I'll be honest with you, we lost. It's the only time we've lost in relation to all of these others. We felt it was an incredible opportunity to increase and enhance the open space and parkland in Winnetka. Unfortunately, we lost. The residents did not support our dream, and it was only $2 million. Now they're talking about almost a $12 million project into the lake with 3 walls, count that, 3 walls that will be on Elder and Centennial, between Elder, the dog park, and Centennial. Now they're talking about this, and they think we would see the day when the Winnetka Park District would actually trade our most precious land, our lakefront, which is priceless, and our private park to a private individual. I have always believed that the village has jurisdiction over the lake, and we finally know that it is true. I hope the village council helps us to protect the residents of Winnetka from the personal desires of very few who wish to take our public property and protect the lakefront in its entirety. You have the, I'm almost done. You have the ability to keep what you're their forefathers. You guys are the new forefathers. We need to protect what the forefathers did, and they worked so hard to preserve. The Park District does not have the jurisdiction over the lakefront. You do. The Park District, you have the control over the zoning of this property. And so we called former village trustees to ask why this is that it's R2. And they all said, because it's a check and balance in the system. You can call Nan Greenow, Louise Holland. That's why this is the way that it is. The Park District does not have the right to give away our public land. It is priceless. And we're not going to let them take this land from us. The village is the oversight that keeps this village together, and the last protection we have to ensure that these issues are held in the best interest. You are the forefathers. God help us. Make the Athenian hope. How can it be better giving away public parkland? Ted mentioned value. The lakefront's priceless. And then I have one other little comment about a side issue. If you do one Winnetka, please make Lincoln Avenue wider than it is.
Thanks, Katie.
No. Thanks, Katie. Okay, anybody else? Seeing none, I will close public comment and we'll move forward with the remainder of the agenda. All right, item 5 is reports. Trustees, do we have any reports? We'll start with Tina. Any reports? I can come back.
No, just that Plan Commission has a special meeting. I think we're working on confirming a special meeting for next Wednesday on the comp plan.
Great. John?
No report.
Bob?
Chris, last night we had a Landmark Preservation Commission meeting, and I was asked to bring a couple thoughts to the council, some of which are current, some of which are past. One, you may recall, Chris, that they were interested in having the name changed to the
Right, and I
historic.
asked them to write a proposal.
Oh, you want them to write a proposal?
Yes, definitely.
Okay.
I talked to Jack at great length about that.
I'll get back to Jack
Good.
on that. Good. Secondly, they're getting the process going on the preservation awards, and you may recall that people in the community are recognized for doing either renovations or holistic projects on their home. And sometimes it's hard to identify good projects. And so if people in the audience or people up here know of homes that have been nicely renovated, bringing them back to the architecture of the original architecture of the properties, please get in touch with me or anyone else on that commission, because, some of the folks out there in the neighborhoods, they don't know that this is there, and they really should be recognized if we can do that. So give it some thought, if you would. And lastly, and Rob, I don't know what the answer is on this, you can talk to Chris Marks, but there's some desire to have certain work that's done on the commission or certain properties that are identified sort of have some publicity through the weekly electronic mailings. So maybe we can get Josie connected with them or whatever, if there's, to give some thought for something that could be written up.
I think probably the best thing would be for me to coordinate with David and hear from Chris what issues need to be brought forth.
Right.
I don't think this would be difficult to do.
Okay, I think that would be great, because there are some ways to sort of raise their profile on things they do other than demolition permits. And lastly, I would say that our neighbors down the street at North Shore Country Day came in. They are going to end up demolishing a very interesting home on their property for their gymnasium project, but I will say this, their presentation was fantastic. They are great neighbors. They're very sensitive to what they're doing. It's progress, and unfortunately this beautiful piece of historic property on their land has to go. So that's the way it is.
Wow, a lot going on there.
A lot going on, Les. Very interesting. Very interesting. Thank you.
No report.
Andy?
No report.
No report.
No report? Okay, village attorney,
No report.
village manager,
No report this evening.
and village president. I don't have a report, but I do have a statement that I'd like to share with you. Excuse me. Okay. Luckily, it's prepared, otherwise we'd be here for an hour. After engaging several residents after our last study session, it became apparent to me that my poor choice of words did not accurately convey the message that I intended. In order to clear the air on the issue, I'd like to elaborate on my initial comments. As village president, I've always encouraged informal engagement with anyone in the community who wishes to share their thoughts on just about any issue. I try to be as accessible as possible, and that is just how I perceive this position. As a result, when contentious issues such as the Park District's redevelopment of Elder and Centennial and the associated dealings with Orchard 2020, I hear about it, and I hear about it from all sides. Let me be clear. By characterizing the process we have all witnessed over the past 2 years, as shameful, I was not referring to the impassioned dialogue witnessed by concerned residents, the Park District, or Orchard 2020. What does trouble me is the mean-spirited gossip, innuendo, and poor transparency that has grown out of the debate. When I first came on council in 2008, then President Woodbury explained to me a real simple concept that I have tried to guide me in my activities as village president since. And he basically said, we elected officials need to be hard on the issues, but gentle on the people. It's advice that I have time and time again relied on to guide me in these challenging issues. When any party uses personal belittlement and bullying to win some perceived advantage to further their position, I consider it to be shameful and I consider it to be lazy. It doesn't matter if it's done in the microphone up here, or in hushed tones, or over at the local coffee shop. In this town, I believe we all have the right to participate in an open process to debate the issues, not to use it as a platform to speak poorly about those who might disagree. From my seat, I have seen and heard much of this, and that is the distaste that prompted my poorly chosen words. I apologize to anyone who may have felt marginalized by my comments. I can promise you that was the furthest thing from my mind. Furthermore, village council meetings are not the place to debate decisions made by the park districts and their elected commissioners. I encourage the Park District to conduct conversation rather than presentation. Embrace the controversy and find the middle ground. We're all neighbors and friends here in Winnetka, and I hope we remain so when this whole thing is in the rearview mirror. Thank you. And we'll move forward. Item 7 is the consent agenda. Do I have to do anything? Or did you change it?
No.
Approval of agenda.
Just approval of the agenda.
Oh, approval of the agenda, okay. I'll ask the village clerk to read the items on the consent agenda.
Like, first you need to ask if anybody wants to remove.
Oh, I'm sorry, I lost my place.
Okay.
See, I get all flustered when I do that stuff, so. And on a good night, I'm not very good at this, so. All right, approval of the agenda. Does any trustee wish to remove an item from the consent agenda for a separate vote?
Nope.
No?
It's not under consent.
No, you're good. It's good.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, thank you.
May I have a motion to approve the final form of the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Voice vote, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that passes. Item 7 is the consent agenda, and I will ask the village clerk to read the items on the consent agenda.
Thank you. Approval of the village council minutes for January 3rd, 2023 regular meeting, January 10th, 2023 study session, and January 17th regular meeting. Approval of the warrant list dated January 13, 2023 through February 2nd, 2023 in the amount of $3,827,681.71. Resolution number R14, 2023, approval of a collective bargaining agreement with International Association of Firefighters. Resolution number R15, 2023, MABUS intergovernmental agreement for renewal. And resolution number R18, 2023, rejecting all bids, waiving bidding requirements, and awarding a contract to WEG Transformers USA LLC for a 750 kVA pad mount transformer. Resolution number R22, 2023, purchase of 2 police squad cars.
Okay, may I have a motion to approve the consent agenda by omnibus vote?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote?
Trustee Dahlman.
Yes.
Trustee Kripe.
Yes.
Trustee Handler.
Yes.
Trustee Dearborn.
Yes.
Trustee Swerk.
Yes.
Trustee Apatow.
Yes.
That motion carries, thank you. Okay, next item, I think I'm on the right page now.
Yep.
Item 8, ordinances and resolutions. 8A, ordinance number M2-2023, 484 and 488 Elder, plat of consolidation and variation. This is up for introduction and possibly adoption. Council will consider approving a request submitted by the applicants of the subject properties to consolidate the 2 existing lots into a single lot of record. Community Development Director David Schoen is here to review.
Good evening. Just quickly review this plat of consolidation. The applicant resides at 484 Elder, and if approved, will demolish the residence at 488 Elder and consolidate the lots into one lot of record. The proposed plat of consolidation complies with the minimum zoning standards for creating a lot. So there's no variations in terms of the lot itself. What has happened is that with the creation of this new lot, the lot has gotten wider. Under our zoning requirements, the wider lot requires larger minimum side yard setbacks. So the existing home that's going to remain, staying in the same place, is no longer going to will not meet the new requirement of 12 feet, as the house currently is 8 feet from the side lot line. Thus, the need for the variation that's associated with the plat of consolidation. So both advisory bodies, the zoning board and the plan commission, have reviewed the request. They both unanimously recommended approval of the plat of consolidation, and the zoning board the variation. There were public comments received that are in your packet. One had to do with an existing parking issue on Myrtle that a neighbor experienced, and a request that when the applicant constructs, that there be landscaping along Myrtle, given the circular drive that's being installed. And then the property owner to the south, there is a private easement between 488 and the private property to the south. Currently, there's a shed on 488 that slightly falls over onto the property to the south, and a private easement was put in place. When that shed is gone, that easement goes away. That property owner just wanted it to be on record that that's out there, and you received a copy of that. Given that both bodies unanimously recommended approval, we put it on your agenda as the possibility to waive introduction and adopt. If you don't want to do that, then we're just looking for you to consider introduction.
Okay, any questions for David?
David, I did reach out to the resident that wrote the letter, November 15th, the neighbor, a very reasonable person, and one of the issues was landscaping, and confirmed by, I don't know if the owners of the property are here, but the plan, she mentioned that the owners plan to do extensive landscaping around the drive and so on to sort of block the concrete view that this neighbor is going to be viewing. I don't know if you're aware of that?
With the applicant, we do not have a permit in.
Okay.
Right, they presented a plan of what they were planning to do. Again, with a plat of consolidation, a person does not have to submit plans for what they plan to do, but they did submit a plan.
They did, yes, I saw the plan, yeah. And so that was, and I don't know that the village has a lot of say in landscaping, but just want to go on record that the owners did say they were going to landscape extensively to sort of dull the concrete look of the driveway and so on. And the second was on the parking. There's a parking issue, as you mentioned, and what she said was that they've identified a solution by flipping the allowed parking to her side of the street on Myrtle, but that someone from the village is supposedly following up on that. Are you aware of that?
The request was to switch parking to the other side.
Right.
Currently on Myrtle, the parking is on the east side of Myrtle, up and down Myrtle, not just on this block. And I
Okay.
can let Jim elaborate on this further. Our policy is not to switch no parking back and forth going down a block for safety reasons,
Bless you.
wanting to keep the lanes of travel in the same general location going up and down the street.
It sounds like what she's saying is that the commentary was to move it to the west side. Move the whole parking instead of on the east side, go to the west side.
Oh, for the whole stretch
I
of
think that's what
Myrtle?
she was saying. I mean, I don't know who she spoke to about it. Maybe she spoke to Jim.
Yeah, I think that there was a request that was made for engineering to work with Public Works to consider that move, but as Dave highlighted, and typically we don't do zigzagging of
No, I don't
parking.
think
It stays
she's talking about
consistent.
zigzag. I don't think she's.
There's nothing confirmed to switch that side of the street.
Well, then someone should probably get back to her. I mean, she did write the letter in November. I think she went to the Plan Commission meeting. She says that someone in the village is supposedly following up on that. Maybe she's misinformed.
Okay,
But I think it would
I
be
will
nice
follow
for
up
someone
with her.
from the village to follow up with her and talk about it,
Okay,
if you don't mind.
yes.
Okay,
We
all right,
will.
good, thank you.
Others?
Quick question on the variation because of the wider lot and the setbacks. Future additions to that property, is that variation also for additions, or will they still have to meet the new setback on future additions?
They would have to meet the new setback on future additions.
Great.
Yeah, so the variation is just for
The
the footprint of the
non-conforming.
building as it exists today.
Okay, thank you.
I just noted that I think that the parking concerns on Myrtle probably, and we discussed this at the Plan Commission, will probably be helped alleviated because there's gonna be a lot more parking provided on site. And that, the thought was generally that there's gonna be, even though there'll be paved area, it'll feel more open because there won't be a structure there. Just following up on some conversations.
Anybody on this side? Nope. Not here. And would anybody in the public like to speak on this matter? Seeing none, we'll bring it back. Doesn't look like a big appetite for conversation. So the first question is, are we interested in waiving introduction? Do I have a motion to waive introduction of ordinance number M2
So moved.
2023?
Second.
Voice vote, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that motion passes. Now may I have a motion to adopt ordinance number M2 2023?
So moved.
Second?
Roll call vote.
Trustee Apitoff?
Yes.
Trustee Dahlman?
Yes.
Trustee Swerk?
Yes.
Trustee Dearborn?
Yes?
Trustee Handler?
Yes.
Trustee Kreip?
Yes.
That motion carries. Thank you. All right, moving right along. Item B is resolution number R19-2023, awarding streetscape Phase 5 contract. Village staff is recommending the council consider approval of the contract for streetscape Phase 5 to A-Lamp Contractors. Assistant Village Engineer Emily Grimm is here to review these tonight. Hi, Emily.
Hello. Thank you, President Rentz, and good evening, everyone. Like President Rentz says, I'm here to present Streetscape Phase 5. So just a quick reminder, this is the area that we're going to be in this year. I'm not going to go extensively over the design because that's already been presented to council, but we will be on Elm Street this year, the north side of Elm Street. We're also going to do a small section of bump out there on Lincoln and Elm, the Lincoln and Elm intersection. We did get 5 contractors to bid on this project, and the low bid was A-Lamp Concrete Contractors. They have also done phase 1 through 4 of the streetscape project, and the previous 3 years of street rehab. So we are very confident that they can complete this work, and they are our low bidder. I also briefly want to go into a couple of other costs associated with streetscape that aren't a part of this contract. So we do have some long lead time items that the village is purchasing apart from the contract. That would be the lighting controller. These are approximate values, approximately $7,000. And the Sternberg lights, $47,000. Those costs will come to the village for approval. But I did want to include them in this presentation because they do come out of the same budget. I want to briefly go over the budget. So the main takeaway from this budget is that overall we are below budget for the streetscape project, which is great, especially in this time that we're in of a lot of high costs. So we do have 2 funds that the streetscape budget comes out of, the Downtown Revitalization Fund and the Water Fund. Our total budget for this project is $1.623 million, and we're coming in at a total cost of $934,740 for this contract. The Water Fund, the original budget from that fund was $313,000. We are slightly over budget at $323,000. But it's proposed that this shortfall can be covered with other available funds in that water fund. And then I also briefly want to go over the schedule for streetscape this year. So we do have a later start than usual, with a start date of July 17th. And that was done to avoid a couple of big ceremonies in the village that happen, the Memorial Day Parade, Music Fest, 4th of July Parade, and the sidewalk sale that all need Elm Street to go on. And with that, I would ask the council to consider approving this resolution R19-2023, awarding the contract to A-Lamp Concrete Contractors for an amount not to exceed $934,739.85. And with that, I will take any questions that you have.
Any questions?
I do have a question, Emily. Yeah. So kudos to come way under budget on the capital expenditure, but how did we budget $1.6 million and ended up at $930,000? I mean, what do you think went into that inflated that budgeted amount so much?
So, hold on just a second. There we go. I know that we were factoring in some higher unit costs with respect to some of the bids we were seeing with work from the previous year that included water main work, which is a little bit over, as well as road type work. So these were conservative budget estimates that were put together at that time. Jim, if there's anything else you'd want to add.
I guess the question, Jim, is...
We were seeing quite a bit of inflation, and we were just trying to be careful.
Are we seeing a dramatic shift in cost of work like this, or, I mean, what was built in?
No, I think originally the plans were to maybe expand the scope a little bit more when we originally thought about it, and then it got whittled down to just the north side of Elm Street, and then that southwest corner bump out changed, so the scope changed slightly on it as well.
What did we
preliminary
take out on the scope? What was, how was the scope reduced?
Well, I think at one point there was consideration preliminarily when these were put together that one Winnetka would have been further advanced. There would have been the south side of Elm Street that could have been considered at one point, but that was just the estimate numbers that were placed in there.
Well, it's nice to see it go that way, I would
Yeah, that was
agree.
my question, was the 1-3 originally both sides of the street? That's what you're saying?
No, I'm just, those were the preliminary conceptual numbers early on.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, yes, and if I can add, as far as the lower number that came in, the good news is A-Lamp also knows how we work with them probably.
Right.
Which they probably bid it a little more aggressive, as a guess. And if you look at the third, fourth, and fifth bidders, they're 1.3 to 1.55 million.
Right.
So I wouldn't call it like missed budget or we over budgeted, but
We were trying to be
it was
conservative.
good, yeah.
There's a couple other factors that helped with the pricing, I think. One is the timing of the bid was out early, and number two, it was combined with the road program. So there was more scale to bid on, so I think we got better economies there.
And the 934, don't forget there's 54,000 of the light still. That brings it to $1 million, so.
We could have
It's
exceeded
still,
that
it's
budget.
still
300 grand.
We could have
No,
exceeded
it's
that budget.
600 under the budget.
Yeah, timing and scale were
How much,
important.
Yeah, but look at.
how much did
these
that,
all came
right.
in.
be done, John? I'm
No,
sorry.
no,
Right.
I mean, but
Let's keep
I'd rather be this way than the other way around.
We gotta talk to the.
Yeah, sorry. I'd rather see the budget being under than us going the other way around.
really,
Certainly.
that's a shocking, what, that's great to know.
You know,
Okay,
I
enough.
got it. I got it.
How much of this work that's been done is maybe torn up with one Winnetka? Is there any dollars we're expecting? I mean,
We
finished
don't
work?
expect one Winnetka to impact
At
this
all.
work at all.
Right.
We wanted to stay out of that development zone because the public benefit of that development hopefully will
Right. Just want to make
be
sure.
added.
All right. Okay, good.
They scratch it, they own it.
Yeah.
I don't like the planters, but I know a bunch of people here are eager to make sure the planters are in the next phase. So, I'm joking. Are the
No.
those planters that some of my colleagues dislike?
Are they gone?
Are they
No,
86 from the plan?
What's that?
We're not buying more planters.
No.
That
that got,
That's what the savings came.
That's okay.
It's a pause.
Yeah. Okay.
It's a pause.
It's a pause.
Okay, other questions for Emily? Anybody in the public like to speak on this? Seeing none, I'll go ahead and ask for a motion to adopt resolution number R19, 2023.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote?
Trustee Kreip?
Yes.
Trustee Apatow?
Yes.
Trustee Dahlman?
yes.
Trustee Swerk?
Yes.
Trustee Dearborn?
Yes.
Trustee Handler?
Yes.
That motion carries. Thanks, Emily.
Thanks, Emily.
Okay, item C is resolution number R20, 2023, which is the award annual street rehab program contract. This is up for adoption. Village staff is recommending the council consider the approval of a contract for the annual street rehabilitation program to A-Lamp Concrete Contractors. Civil engineer Khalid Obeid is here to review. Take it away.
Thank you, President. Good evening, everyone. Just to introduce myself for the people who don't know me, I'm Ubaid Khalid from Civil Engineer from Engineering Department, and I'm going to present the 2023 Street Rehabilitation Program this year. So I would like to start with the overview of the project. So Street Rehabilitation Project is a part of our capital improvement program, which we do annually for the road infrastructure maintenance and the improvements. And the projects like road resurfacing, road reconstruction are the part of this program. Also the roadway patching for maintenance of the streets, sidewalk improvements. Also the street rehabilitation project is jointly coordinated with the water department to add the project like water replacement and the water services. Typically engineering department design and develop this project with the coordination of water, electric and public works, usually in the month of August and October, and we try to go in the bid early year in January to get the good prices. So this, in the next slide, we have a map for this year program, which are showing you all the streets that are scheduled for construction this year and with the scope of work. So starting from the Elm Street, the section of Elm Street from Maple to Sheridan is scheduled for water main replacement and resurfacing. So the water main on this section is in the continuity of the streetscape project. So it will be a one big project on Elm Street while they're installing the water main from Lincoln to Sheridan. The next street is Spruce Street from Glendale Avenue to Locust. Similar scope of work, water main replacement and road resurfacing. There are two streets, Cherry and Scott. Those are carried over from last year, which we took out because of the budgetary constraint, which we are going to do this year. The water main replacement and the resurfacing is scheduled on Cherry from Maple to Sheridan. And on the Scott Avenue, there are only water services replacement are scheduled. Also, there are few streets that are scheduled to resurface this year, which include the section of Randolph Street, Berkeley Avenue, Birch Street, and Providence Street, as shown in the map. Also, on the Tower Road from Hibbert to Forestway Drive, we plan to do some concrete roadway patching in order to maintenance of the road. There is one village alley at 38 Greenway Road. It's behind the Northern Trust and the 7-Eleven building on the Greenway Road, which is scheduled for reconstruction this year. This is the only public alley that is left to reconstruct. All the other public alleys are recently constructed in the previous year's project. Which is also used by the businesses and our public works crew to pick up the garbage. So that's the reason we are going to reconstruct that alley. And at the intersection of Willow and Rosewood, there is some sidewalk improvement. We are adding a new crosswalk with the flashing pedestrian sign on that intersection. So with this is the complete program we plan this year. And on the next slide, this is the overview of the overall budget for this program. So because there is a different nature of projects we do in this program, so it's a different amount of money coming from the different budget item like roadway patching, street maintenance, sidewalk improvement, and then the water fund for the water project like water replacement and the service replacement. So originally we planned, and the total budget for this project was 3.68 million. And when we opened the bids, I'm going to show you the bids in the next slide, we noticed that we received the bids more than our expectation. So after the complete analysis, staff proposed to carry over the water main work on Willow Railroad Crossing to 2024 and use that amount towards this project to cover up the fund for the water projects which we are going to do this year. So with that change, our total available budget amount will be 3.87. So on January 26th, we opened the bids and we received the bid. This is the table which you can see all the bidders with their original bid amount. So if you see, the ALM contractor is the apparent low bidder with the bid amount of 3.9 million, which is also not over our planned budget, which was 3.6, but also slightly over as compared to our available budget, which is 3.87 million. So what the staff did is staff modified the scope of the program without impacting the project significantly. So staff proposed to change some of the roadway patching on Tower Road to reduce it. Originally, there is a significant roadway patching plan on the Tower Road, but with the modification, we are only focusing on the higher priority and the medium priority patches, and the minor priority patches will be carried over to the next year program. So with that modification, all bids were modified, and you can see still the ALM concrete contractor is apparently a low bidder with 3.869 bid amount, which is under our available budget amount, which is 3.87. Also, there are some additional alternate bid items. If you see it at the bottom of the bid tabulation that is attached in the agenda report, we asked the bidder to quote on it. Those are not the part of this project. As council is aware about the new state law related to the LED services, so water and electric department is working on this program And in order to determine the actual cost for the service replacement, staff asked the bidder to provide the cost or the codes, so we can work efficiently and calculate the actual cost for that service replacement. But those are just for the reference and are not the part of this project. And also, private property led service replacements is not the part of this contract. With that, I just want to give a quick overview of the communication how we going to communicate the resident throughout the year during the project. We send usually the numerous amount of the letters to keep them updated and connected with the construction activities. This table showing you the type of letter and the other information what we usually send out during the construction, and all those communication letters are also available on our website for everyone. So with that, staff is recommending considering the council to adopt the resolution to award the contract to ALM, not exceeding the amount of 3.869. And with that, I am happy to answer any question.
Questions for Khalid?
Quick question, sorry. When I read this, I sort of, the modified bids on the relative to patching on Tower Road, you might be interested in this, Tina. Maybe we should just do the light patching as well. I mean, we're gonna be there for $48,000. You're talking about rolling it over into next year. I mean, can't we find $48,000 to do this? Or Jim, sorry, not Brian. Sorry, Brian.
Okay.
Brian's on another.
Are you still on your cruise?
I am happy to use $50,000 of Brian's water fund money for my roadway patching.
All right.
I am happy to do that. Actually, so as Obed alluded to, so we skim the work down here. We rank these roadway patchings as either high, medium, or light. Some of these patches don't have to take place right now. Those are what we consider light and semi-medium cracks on it. We did an analysis of the roadway. This program allows us to focus on the high and medium priority locations. So we're really addressing what has to be fixed right now. These other ones can wait for a little while. When we put this together, we went optimal. Let's look at everything we can take care of right now, but there won't be any safety issues. There's not anything you have to worry about plows hitting or cracks forming on it. Everything is fine. So
Yeah, I agree.
The program we have.
But you're on the road.
The efficiency.
Why not just do it? I mean,
Actually, by increasing some of these larger, the inconvenience would be bigger, because we have to replace larger panels versus a smaller piece the way we're doing it right now.
And that was also my only comment, was like, why not do it now? So these smaller cracks,
They're going to be
the
big
smaller cracks, once it gets into water in there, and it freezes and thaws, they become bigger cracks faster.
Correct, but as council may recall, when we built Tower Road, there's steel reinforcement through here. So it's not like a sidewalk where it cracks, it's gonna gape really big, and it's 9-inch thick reinforced concrete, so it's pretty robust roadway.
And I wouldn't worry about the extra disruption, because you're gonna disrupt them again in the future. And I think in the presentation, they said 2024. Was that part of the?
We were saying we would budget concrete roadway patching into 2024, anything that.
Not for this particular Tower Road.
Yes, for the Tower Road.
Yeah, for pieces of it, correct.
Yeah, so if it's a year later.
Well, it's just keeping tabs on how we keep tabs on the repairs that are there. Again, not all the locations are in the exact same spot. It's spread out.
I mean, the original plan was to do all the patching on Tower Road. I mean, that was the original, and then the budget.
The original concept was to do all the patching.
So, I mean, originally you were thinking about doing light, medium, and heavy patching. I don't know.
Yeah, now we're in the opposite of being over the budget.
Right, we're going to be struck dead by this, but because we're not going under. It would seem to me that
spend money again.
Yeah, you may. I mean,
Yeah, so early in the fiscal year, we're trying to keep
understand.
everything on
I
budget.
understand.
So if you all want to spend more money,
I usually don't ask for more, but.
Well, we're just going to take some of the money you just saved on streetscape and throw it up on.
exactly.
Yeah.
not all that fun, you're not.
So anyway,
Yeah, it's value engineering, which isn't always, it's like cheapening the project or not getting what
you're on the road. It
anticipated.
seemed to me just do it, but
Right. Not sure what other people think, but.
yeah,
We can expand the work if need be. Let staff work on what we have budget-wise. If we have available funds to do everything towards the end of the year without having to come back to council for a change order, we'll work within the limits that we have. If we can cost save out throughout the program, if we think as we get close to doing the patching on Tower Road, if we think we're going to need to do a little bit more, staff will come back to council if it's above the manager's purchasing purview.
When would this project start, do you think? Like Tower Road?
The streetscape, well, so this program is a little bit different than previous years. As Obed indicated, we're going to be linking this with the streetscape project on Elm Street. So most likely we'll be starting probably April-ish, May, get started on the water main work so we can get rolling right away. The Tower Road probably would be taking place over the summer months.
Right, so you don't have that long to find out if you've got the extra money anyway. I mean,
well, we'll be moving along with the project. We'll keep tabs on where we're at with stuff. If staff needs to, we're happy to come back for a change.
Okay.
order.
So I think, as Jim was saying, and I think it makes some sense, let's proceed if you're in agreement with the recommendation. If we find other efficiencies in the project, we could take those light repairs. If we feel like we can get them done at a right amount, we'll bring back a change order.
right, and keep in mind, if you
And
go,
while they're still mobilized.
right, when you
while
put
they're
it back in
still
24, it's gonna cost you more than doing it now. So
Totally understand.
that's for sure, okay.
We'll plan on doing those repairs either way, if that's the direction staff wants us to take.
Let's see if we can't get it in on target, but if not, we'll bring it back.
Okay, good.
Any other questions?
The
Yeah.
difference in the bids is pretty astonishing to me. And I think it speaks to the fact that we have a working relationship, as I think somebody mentioned with ALAMP, that we know the workmanship is, we're not sacrificing. So it gives me a lot of comfort to know that, but I was just kind of astounded that I didn't know if that difference was because of the water replacement or what was creating that big a difference, but irrelevant. I think the fact we have ALAMP doing is gives me some comfort. That's good.
I just wanted to clarify something. It's not part of this budget or this proposal, but we are asking ALAMP to give us, consider giving pricing so that if somebody's lead service line needs replacing, we will have the cost. Is that part?
Brian. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And that's why Brian's here.
Oh, that's why Brian's here.
So we ask.
Welcome back, Brian.
Thank you. We ask that it not be considered as a factor in the award recommendation because we don't know what each individual homeowner will elect to do. We'll have now a hard number we can present to the homeowner as one of their options for this is for the private property lead service replacement. So we wanted to capture that in the bid. In the bids that Jim and Obed have presented, the cost for extending the service to the property line is still carried in the capital fund of the water project. And you'll recall then that we're for the private property work, would extend the credit up to, I believe it was $5,000 or 50%. This will be a bid number that we'll have to present to each customer. It's based on, includes footages to like from their property line into their house. So it'll be a number that's specific to each customer that'll be presented. After we have some more time to look at these, if they're not, let's say as competitive as we hope they'd be, is we still have some time from my staff's to procure maybe another contractor of choice, so we have so maybe two options. And we're still, per council direction, saying you will be able to go get your own contractor if you don't want, and still be eligible for that credit that the council's authorized. The money that Obed presented in a separate capital account for water services is where that money is shown for the private property work, the $5,000 allotment. So that's carried in my account in a separate bucket.
Yeah,
Thanks for asking the question.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify because I like how we'll be able, why we're chewing up people's roads, right? They'll have an option. Hopefully, it'll be competitive and it will be attractive for people to take advantage of it then. So I like that. Thanks for doing that.
Brian, back on the lead service lines, so we're talking about the homes that are contiguous to the street, the work going on here, the water work that's going on.
So
correct,
the
at the
best way
moment?
to say it would be is any water service that's connected to the water, be any lead water service that's connected, whether it's on the street that Jim and his staff is overhauling, but if we touch it, it's under the state law, and those customers, impacted customers in that sense, will be extended that option. There's conceivably on one of the streets, I'd say on a side street, there's a house that's not on a street that's being renovated, but the water main that's touching is being replaced. So that homeowner might not be on Elm Street, but might be on Maple and get the same credit extended to them.
Didn't we talk about each year having potentially homes that were not on?
Yes, so there's
what-
3 parts, and so the
Yeah.
communication that Obaid mentioned, the first mailer that'll go out, now that we have some clarity to what the program is for the cap work. So there's 3 buckets for lead water service rebates. There's the emergent bucket, we figure about 14 homes a year. There's gonna be the voluntary program, there's gonna be, the funding that you approved is for 20, when we issue the rules, it'll be first come, first serve. And then there's gonna be the water main work, which is roughly, I think it was 88 or 90 services in the scope of work they're led. So staff's, what we're gonna be doing, consistent with what was asked of the water fund, is that we've already worked with the printing company. We're gonna be issuing to all lead water service customers a mass mailer, saying here's the clarity on the state law, how it would be handled, and then how you're impacted if you're in the project list for the capital work. We haven't sent that out for 2 reasons. One, trying to get some clarity on what this is gonna look like for what projects we're going to do. And 2 is there's a road moratorium in place till March 15th. So in practicality, no one can do a planned water service replacement until after a date sometime after March 15th. And David left, but we partner with community development. They're gonna be our intake for the voluntary program, so we're gonna keep it consistent with people knowing to go to community development to get into the program. On the backside, David's staff and my staff may know the 20.
So will the amount of voluntary homes available any one year be sort of a backed-in number based on how many homes along the water main work?
So the water main work is completely separate, so we presented that based on the records. We may find one or, we didn't plan, but based on records, we have budgeted that as a separate amount in the water service account. There's 20 for the voluntary program in the water service account, and 14 for someone has a leak, whether it's in the road right away or on private property. So those are 3 separate line items in the water service capital account.
But you have 88.
I have like 88 or 90 for associated with the water main.
And is that 90% of the homes, you're assuming a certain number will not?
Well, no,
do this?
Every customer that has a lead water service is eligible for the credit, and the only way I wouldn't expend that money is if they sign the waiver electing that they're not gonna replace it. So in theory, I'm planning on every lead water service customer in the water main work taking it. Practically, there's probably gonna be 1 or 2 people that elect to sign the waiver and not do it. They won't get the credit. The funds will stay in the water fund. The option the customers have though is gonna be is which contract for the private property work, do they wanna use ALAMP? Do they wanna do their own contractor, or do they wanna decline?
Okay, so when will the voluntary program kick off?
Again, knowing that it can't physically start till March 15th, our goal is to have it in everybody's hands by March 15th. It's gonna be one large letter that explains the whole thing, and consistent with the direction we go to all roughly 1,400 residences that have a lead water service.
Got it.
And the reason for the timing is, again, with the road moratorium, you can't start construction work for non-emergency work till after the 15th of March for opening roads.
And is the cost for a volunteer home that's not on a water main work, is the cost of that higher likely than the homes that are being disrupted or whatever?
I haven't had a chance to look at the unit prices and run through some mock analysis on what I've seen other customers pay, so I couldn't answer that now. I mean, if this looks like a really phenomenal deal, we'd have to talk to the contractor about it. It wouldn't be a requirement in their current contract to go beyond what's in the water main work.
I see.
I'm sure the village attorney would have some other direction I'd have to put on top of that to make it.
Okay, good, thank you.
Other questions? No. Seeing none? All right, are we good here? Any discussion, any question? No? Okay, let's move forward. May I have a motion to adopt resolution number R20, 2023?
So moved.
Second?
Roll call vote?
Trustee Craig?
Yes.
Trustee Dahlman?
Yes.
Trustee Swerk?
Yes.
Trustee Dearborn?
Yes.
Trustee Handler?
Yes.
Trustee Apatow?
Yes. That motion carries. Thank you. Thanks, Obaid. Okay, item D is resolution number R21, 2023, award of Hibbard Preserve stormwater contract. Village staff is recommending that council consider approval of the contract for the Hibbard Preserve stormwater improvements to Berger Excavation Contractors. Engineering Director Jim Bernal is here to review this one. Take it away, Jim.
Thank you, President Rentz. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for the opportunity for my staff to present to you. Now you've met all of the engineers that work here at the village, so this is a good opportunity for them. It's a pleasure to present to you this evening for the consideration, the approval of the construction contract for the Hibbard Preserve Stormwater Management Wetland Project. This is a very important project, so we're happy to get this going. So in the second half of 2022, the milestones listed here on this slide were accomplished. In October of this year, the village had completed the intergovernmental agreement with the Cook County Forest Preserve, which was a huge milestone after much negotiation. That same month, the village also advertised and bid the tree removal contract. This work was completed December 27th of 2022. And then on December 9th, the village released the bid for the Hibbard Preserve Stormwater Management Project, which I'll be presenting here this evening for you. With us here as well, if there's any technical questions, Mike Waldron, who you all may know, is here to help if there's any detailed questions about the project presented. So this phase of the overall stormwater master plan is the linchpin for the overall stormwater conveyance from both the north and south of Willow Road. So this is really the piece that pulls it all together, because there's one discharge point to the Skokie River from this parcel. This project, and just highlighting some of the critical parts of this, is this project will provide 75 acre feet, or be able to hold about 24.1 million gallons of above ground storage. This is primarily all above ground storage. That provides 45% of the total project storage for the west side. This is the most extensive of all the phases for the above ground storage and wetland improvement project. This is where you'll see most of that. And again, this was part of the IGA, which requires us to improve the water quality discharging to the Skokie River. So this is that another piece of the puzzle that moves forward with cleaning that water. So some of the key elements to the project include tree removal and buckthorn clearing. Again, this contract was completed on December 27th. This project now completed means that we don't have to remove any additional trees, and all the buckthorn that was there, which was kind of that heavy foliage where it looked really full, that all has been completed. So there'll be no more vegetation removal. That was the premise of getting that done early. This phase will focus a lot on the earthwork, the grading, and that wetland restoration that I noted previously. This project also includes the installation of box culverts connecting the north of Willow Road project over to the Forest Preserve, and a box culvert that leaves the Forest Preserve site and heads east down Sunset. That gets us prepped for the Crow Island storage project. There'll be proposed improvements to the Hill Road pump station. That's just enhancements to that area and an addition of a low flow pump system. And then there's also water main improvements on Hibbard Road. That's in conjunction with the stormwater project. I note that this phase of the project is in compliance with the Cook County Forest Preserve IGA. It was developed with the input from the Forest Preserve and the Army Corps staff, and I just note that because there was a lot of discussions about that detailed work. This meets the upstream storage and water quality requirements of that IGA, excuse me, again, making it a very critical component for us. So this exhibit here just kind of brings us into light of really what the scope of this is. As you'll see, there's the blue meandering line that's through here. This is the now new path for we'll call it the creek section down the middle. As you may recall previously, it just went straight down and then it came at an angle. A portion of that angle is remaining, and that is to allow for the connections of the overflow into that wetland area that currently exists southeast of that ditch. And then the green sort of depicts the wetland enhancement areas through there. So on January 17th, bids were open and read aloud publicly. The village received 4 bids for this project, with a low bid coming from Berger Excavating for $7,151,173. And as you can see, there was John Keno and Company was very close to that, and then the cost went up as we move along. So the engineer's estimate for this project prior to going to bid was $6,897,000, roughly. So that the low proposal from Berger Excavating was slightly above that by about $254,000. So with that, their staff took a step back, and we looked at for some cost savings measures that would be able to drive that price down a little bit. And one of the primary things that we noted was the restoration to the landfill. We had continued that in, anticipating that once we started adding soil, we could go ahead and start restoring the landfill area a little bit. Realizing the other phases that are coming closely right behind, it didn't make sense to go ahead and do the restoration if we're going to keep adding soil. So we took a look at it and were able to remove those items, offering a cost savings of about $227,000. Now that was just using Berger's prices. And so as you'll see in the column to the right where it says modified bid amount, we took those bidders' numbers, reduced the same quantities, and that's the results from it. Again, Berger Excavating still remained the low bidder for this project. So this phase of the project is being paid for from two funding sources. There's the Stormwater Fund, and from the Water Fund for, again, the additional water work on Hibbard Road. That will be coordinated with the stormwater work. That was a separate add that was added to the contract. So with those, again, with those reductions, we'd have a new contract total of $6,923,469. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Tim real quick, who will walk me through the stormwater.
Good evening. Included with your agenda packet is the stormwater program tracking sheet, which you all should be pretty familiar with at this point. We developed this sheet back in June of 2022 when we approved the North of Willow excavation project, and we're utilizing this sheet as our primary source to track the budget components of the stormwater program. So with each new milestone, with each new contract on a monthly basis, we update the tracking sheet and we highlight what is changing with each month. So it highlighted on the tracking sheet in the packet, I think it was pink, but to be able to show it more clearly in our presentation, we made it purple, is the contract under consideration for tonight. So that's the purple items. And then as part of the tracking, if you remember last June, we provided an annual escalation to account for the inflationary environment that we're in. And at that time, we decided upon the CPI as the metric to be utilized. So the tracking sheet includes an escalation factor based on the year-end CPI as of December 31st of 2022 of 6.5%. So I'll go through the next three slides. It breaks it down by the major components of the project: the storage, the conveyance, and then the soft cost and the contingency. And just to be clear, the items in green are those amounts that have already been committed to. An escalation factor was not applied to those items. They're already under contract. They're already committed to. It's the white hard costs for the storage and the conveyance that had an escalation factor applied. So as you can see, for storage, the total project stands at just under $27 million. And then in the conveyance budget, again, the purple amounts is where this current contract is being slotted in. This is where you see the green items, again, are the committed costs, and then the white items are the ones that are future costs that are still budgeted for this project. So total conveyance stands at $36.57 million. And then the soft costs, this is mostly all your engineering, all your fees. This portion of the project is largely committed, and the contingency currently stands at $5.7 million. So in total, we had $32.1 million in previously committed costs and $6.5 million being proposed that's applicable to the Stormwater Fund. So a total summary, costs that it committed to date of $38.7 million, with a balance left to complete of $37.4 million, with a $5.7 million contingency, which represents about 15% of the balance complete, which is a number we feel very comfortable with. The project total of $81.9 million. And then just taking a look at the funding sources, Just kind of a status of the cash flow where we stand today. So we've committed to $38.7 million. We've spent $18.1 million, leaving cash flow requirements for the committed costs of $20.5. As of January 31st, we have just under $7 million on hand in the stormwater fund, with several near-term additions to cash expected to materialize within the next 3 to 6 months. Leaving us with total available cash of $23.9 million. We also have, we're working through the DCO grant process, as you know, for the $16 million. That's going to be coming to council soon, once the state releases the grant agreement. They've been working on it steadily, albeit slowly, but we're getting very near the end of that. And then we're also working on getting that $12 million released as well. And finally, the Burger contract, the $6.5 million, we have 100% funded by grants. So I'll turn it over back to Jim.
Hey, Tim,
Sure.
ask Tim a question here?
Go ahead.
For the 81 million projected cost, that's good. What's the current unfunded amount at this point? The delta that we looked at when we did the budget and so on?
Yes, let me give you the exact amount that we had in the budget.
And has that moved up a little bit, or what?
6.1.
Next time we need
It was about, it was a little under $9 million was the current unfunded amount.
Okay, and that's...
And that's in the out years.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So 9 million, that's what we have to figure out at some point.
Yeah, and
Or someone has to figure out at some point.
Yeah, one of the things we have, that we have the conveyance coming and the Crow Island storage and we are actively seeking grant funding for those projects. We have a big grant out there, application with FEMA for 18 million. It's, that would help close that hole, obviously, and then some.
Sure would. Okay. And then going back on one of the earlier budget sheets on the landfill, I don't really understand what's going on with the landfill reconfiguration or whatever. I think we had $1 million and now it's 250,000, something. I mean, it was on one of the previous charts you showed here.
Yeah, so that's the storm water. I'll go back to it. On the cost tracking sheet, we do have landfill reconfiguration.
Yes, right.
So as part of the overall project, way back when, I think it was Strand estimated, there's a cost component to reconfiguring the landfill. But it's not all at once, it's not at end, it's taking individually as part of each of these projects. So there was a component related to the North of Willow as part of the DeMayo contract, there's a component related to Burger, and we estimate right now the budget for landfill reconfiguration that's remaining is $250,000, which will probably be getting eaten up with the Crow Island storage project at that point.
Wait, the amount remaining, so am I reading this correct that originally we had $1 million of cost budgeted for that reconfiguration?
Yes.
And now it's down to 250,000. We haven't spent anything on that yet, right? I mean,
so
it's just
DeMayo.
Am I?
Yeah.
So,
DeMayo.
So what is the amount of the?
Well, 851 and 252.
Yeah, so the total amount for landfill reconfiguration, how you would read this spreadsheet, you have 250,000 that we're saying is estimated of landfill reconfiguration to complete this project, plus 850,000, and then the 799,000 with the Cook County Stormwater Project.
That's 1.7.
Oh, it goes deeper. Sorry.
No. So how this project works, this isn't like the tracking sheet. It's not like your typical budget statement. So in total, the project is $82 million as it stands. And as we know costs, we slot them in the proper place, and we estimate what's still left, and then we pull it out of the different buckets, so that it tracks costs. It's not necessarily a true budget picture. It's the tracking of the actual costs.
So the Cook County Forest Preserve portion, the 799, are you saying that is sort of making up for the million going down to 252? Is that?
I think the confusion part is
They bastardized my spreadsheet, Bob.
Did
I can't
they
tell
really?
you. I'm sorry.
Okay.
So,
So
yeah,
we're
overall,
up, we're up
yeah.
about 2.5.
again.
I can't get government people to think like the private sector. I've given up at this point, okay?
Okay.
And this is after he looked at it.
Is the landfill cost in line with what the budget originally?
Yes.
It's just being moved
Yes.
around a little bit.
Yes, so overall, that the project you can see is 81.9 million. The only change is the increase from escalation, right? So, but the actual cost within each individual bucket does move around as we know those costs as we issue these contracts.
Okay, so the landfill gets charged with the DeMayo contract, and then it'll be charged with the Berger contract, and then whoever gets the contract for Crow Island, there'll be costs allocated to the landfill because there'll be soils going up there to reconfigure.
So the original budget estimate that would show the $1 million is kind of being carved and paid elsewhere. That's, okay.
Yeah.
And then just going back on all the current contracts, I think the one before us today is the only one that's been coming in over budget. Is that a correct statement or no?
I didn't quite hear you.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't hear your question.
Sorry. So of all the contracts currently accounted for that have been brought to us, I think this is the first one today that's exceeding the budget item, or at least by a lot.
So this contract is utilizing contingency. The DeMayo contract did utilize contingency as well.
Okay. I just want to make sure that pushing these contingencies down the path.
Right.
So we still, again, we have at this
out.
point still for the remaining portion of the project, 15% contingency, which again, we feel comfortable with that number.
Okay.
And we're in line with the total project. Again, as the numbers become known,
right.
We're slotting it in.
Okay. And then the piece we took out today for that landfill restoration, do it later. We've still got that money accounted for somewhere else.
Yes.
If anything from the contingency.
It carries forward.
It carries forward.
And we're not just pushing it down the road. We really can't do it now anyway. Is that true?
Correct.
Okay.
We shouldn't do it now.
Right. Good. Okay. Just want to make sure we're not kicking the can down the road.
And the one thing I want to make,
wasted money to do it now.
Okay. Good. All right.
the one thing I want to make council aware of is that it's becoming clear that, and Mike, I think you'll admit this too, we've just been spanked on the earthwork components of the contract. Very, very fuel-driven and labor-driven. My sense is, and Mike, I don't know what your sense is, you probably see a lot more of these bids than we do, that the earthwork just seems to be the one thing that is, you know, once we get down to the trenches and pipes, everything seems to fall right into line, pretty much where we expected it. But this earthwork, there's a lot of hoodoo in it, especially when you're doing golf courses and wetlands creations and all this stuff, and you can see it in the bids. DeMayo was scared to death to take this on, even though he's doing our golf course work, because he was just uncomfortable with this whole wetlands restoration and what that entails and how it gets executed. So there is that piece out there, and thank goodness after this project we really don't have any major earthwork left to do. It's just dig and drop.
Yeah, that's what I was worried about. I see the creep. I was very comfortable under 80, and as we creep, I just want to make sure that
Well, don't forget that the over 80 has nothing to do with scope creep.
I know.
It has to do with,
That's what I mean.
escalation.
That's the escalation I was worried about.
Correct.
So.
Yeah, and I would say that's what we're seeing on our private projects is our LD budget, our land development budgets have almost doubled. So.
Really?
Wow. So it'd be great to offset this with a grant.
But to John's point, I think, you know, getting back to my earlier question about what the gap is, if you will, the overage, the delta between what we have funded, that's the number. Hopefully it'll be covered by a grant, but that's the number you're kind of talking about, that
Right.
the 9 million goes to 10 million, you know, and so on. But right now, it's more or less where you expected it when we did the budget back in
Correct.
October, more
Yes.
or less. Yeah.
Yes.
And if you look at the screen, the contingency, we've already taken $1 million out of contingency.
Right.
Yeah.
So we are eating away at it, which is, that's
Yeah,
We're
it's
kind of why it's there.
Yeah.
That's
But
why it's
we're,
there.
in a dollar component, we're 50% done with the project.
Right, exactly.
So,
Right. Okay. And then my concern going forward a little is we've got these commitments for grants and things. We're gonna start spending money that we may not have the money in our pocket yet from the grants. What if that grant all of a sudden says, oh, it's delayed a year? Do we have a backup plan?
Yeah,
We do, okay.
you have to raise rates.
Okay. Okay.
I mean,
I
can't
just-
squeeze water from a stone, right?
Right.
That's
Okay.
not gonna happen.
Well, I'm just, you can't just stop a project, I mean, you gotta think of the worst case, so, okay.
Other questions? Comments? No? We good?
Good work. So Chris, what, of this project at this point, what's keeping you up at night? What are you thinking about, concerned about? You've got.
My biggest concern, and Jim, I want you to hear me loud and clear, because my biggest concern at this point is these characters from Wadsworth who really turned the budget upside down on the golf course, okay? I mean, by a factor way beyond what anybody could have ever expected, because they took advantage of the situation, and I'm really, really unhappy with it. And they control a lot of the fine grading and the preparation and all the things that are necessary for us to get to seeding the property at the end of this year. And if they drop the ball, we're screwed, plain and simple. And I am telling you, I'm worried about these guys, because that's all I hear is Wadsworth this, Wadsworth that. And I don't want to, and they're the sort of a company, at least my gut is telling me they're the sort of company that'll come up in August and say, well, couldn't get it done, sorry. And we've just blown the whole project by another year waiting for the grass to grow.
Okay.
That's what keeps me up at night.
Okay.
And it's up to him and Mike and his people to go ahead and make sure that these guys stay on schedule and that they perform. And if they don't perform, that you raise the flags early.
Understood.
Because the other problem I worry about is they're a subcontractor to our contractor. So, yeah, so we're one level removed from them, which doesn't give us as much control. And I really want you to watch those pay authorizations closely, Jim, because I don't trust these people.
Understood.
Brought in by our contractor?
Huh?
Brought in by our contractor?
No, they were bought in by the Park District and not by the Park District, they were bought in by the
Architect.
Golf course.
by the golf course architect. It's a specialty.
Yeah.
You know, it's like you only have
It's
so
just
many
not a lot
people
of
that
them
can
out
do this sort of woodwork, right? I mean, they're a specialty contractor and they took advantage of the situation. So that's what keeps me up at
Good,
night.
I'm glad to know that.
Nothing else.
Okay.
You guys gotta take a walk out to the golf course and see it. I mean, they dropped last week. I was out there, and I don't know how many sections were out of the 10x6. I mean, these were big. I mean, they're pipes you can walk through.
Yeah.
And it's really good to see them going in, and it's a big part of the project that is now buried and allows us to go ahead and continue to move on to the rest of the course.
Good.
So.
Okay.
It's pretty impressive work.
Yeah, they're doing a good job. DeMayo's got a real interesting approach to their project, and I do like going out and watching them every day.
Yeah. Okay.
So, anyway, any other questions, comments? Okay, if I can find my script, we can maybe finish this meeting off and get out of here. Oh, no, we have other things too, I'm sorry. Didn't want to get your hopes up.
This is the last one.
Oh, okay. May I have a motion to adopt resolution number R21, 2023?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote.
Trustee Kripe.
Yes.
Trustee Apatow.
Yes.
Trustee Swert.
Yes.
Trustee Dahlman.
Yes.
Trustee Dearborn.
Yes.
Trustee Handler.
Yes.
That motion carries. Thank you. One sec. Oh, okay. All right, item 9, old business, there is none. Item 10, new business, there is none. Item 11, I got to get off my dead rear end and start doing this, but there are no appointments tonight. Item 12 is a closed session. We already had one, so there's none. And item 13, my favorite time of the evening, may I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Voice vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We stand adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Got some stuff done. Time to go build.
I just feel like I'm talking numbers.